Hello and welcome to Mr. Manley History Teacher's latest video on how to answer the comparison style question, which is an 8-mark question within the Health and the People History GCSE paper. This is the third question within that paper. So let's get started on the top tips for how to best answer this type of question. So first of all, with comparison style questions, you will be asked to either compare similarities or differences within two different periods of time. Now, it could be, as well as two different periods of time, it could also be two different individuals, two different events, but you'll be asked to identify either differences or similarities between those people or events or time periods. And it's really important that you just focus on the differences or you solely focus on the similarities. So that's the first top tip. Secondly, you should look to write 2 paragraphs, and I would recommend using the point, evidence, explanation structure if it helps you to write these paragraphs, outlining again the similarities or the differences, not both of them. And just as I recommended spending about 10 minutes on the first question of the Health and the People paper and 10 minutes on the second question, again you should look to spend about 10 minutes on the comparison style question as well. Let's have a look now at a model answer. So here we have an example question: compare a medieval town with early 19th century London. In what ways were they similar? So you could be asked a similar, pardon the pun, type question for your GCSE or within your GCSE paper or your mock paper. But you could be asked, instead of being asked, for example, in what ways were they similar, you could be asked in what ways were they different. So it depends on the question you're given. But here for the model answer and this example question, we're looking at similarities between a medieval town and early 19th century London. And here, right from the start, we are addressing the question in our first sentence. So one way in which a medieval town was similar, so straight away we're showing the marker, we're addressing the question that's being asked of us, to 19th century London, was the amount of human waste that was not effectively disposed of at either time. Apologies for the typo there that I've just highlighted. So in medieval London, many town dwellers also used rivers and streams to remove their sewage and other waste. Sometimes, however, people just threw their toilet waste onto the street along with other household rubbish. So here we've made our point already in the first sentence, and we're using some evidence, we're selecting some information to show the marker that we have an understanding about what life was like in a medieval town. And then we're linking it to the second time period in the question, so early 19th century London. So this sort of behaviour and attitude continued, and that's a really good word to use if you're asked to identify similarities between a time period or two different events or two different people. If you write and use the word continued for a similar based question, you might, on the other hand, if you're asked a difference based question, you might use the word change more often to show the marker you're identifying events or things that have changed over time. So that can be useful if you're asked a difference type question. But here with the similar based question, we're talking about ways in which things have continued between the different time periods. So this sort of behaviour and attitude continued in 19th century London due to poor infrastructure and a lack of government intervention in public health, which is also, incidentally, one of the factors which is important for the 16-mark question. If you click on the link at the top of the video now, it will take you to a 16-mark question guidance video. And then we're going on to the second P paragraph. So another way in which medieval English towns were similar. So again, we're using the word in the question in our answer to show the marker that we're directly answering the question we've been given. Similar to 19th century London was the lack of understanding people had regards to what caused disease. The lack of sanitation, and again here we're moving on to the evidence part of our P paragraph. The lack of sanitation in medieval times was partly because people had no knowledge of germs. They did think, however, that disease was spread by bad air, so were keen to remove unpleasant smells. Now again here we want to link what was happening in medieval towns to what was happening in early 19th century London to show the marker that again we're identifying a similarity. And we pretty much use that word similar again in this next sentence as part of our explanation or even link part of our paragraph. Here it says, this similarly happened in London during the Great Stink of 1858. So we're also using really specific own knowledge there, when miasma or foul-smelling air was blamed for causing sickness and cholera in the capital. So again, we're linking what was happening in medieval towns to what was happening in 19th century London. Now, if you do that and you write 2 paragraphs like I've done here for this type of question, you're pretty much going to be guaranteed 6 marks out of 8. But in order to get 7 or 8 marks out of 8, we want some degree of judgment in our answer as well. And the best way to do that is really just to sort of summarise at the end of your answer in 1 or 2 sentences like this. What both similarities have in common is a lack of understanding at either time as to either how to best maintain hygiene standards, as well as not grasping what caused diseases to spread. So we're basically summing up the main similarity or similarities between the 2 time periods or events that we've been asked about. Alternatively, if you're asked a question about differences, you want to give a judgment on the differences that you've written about in your 2P paragraphs. Let's have a recap on those top tips for this comparison question. So finally, make sure again you read the question carefully. You need to focus solely on the differences or the similarities. You should look to write 2P paragraphs if you can, outlining again just the similarities or just the differences. And you should look to spend approximately 10 minutes answering this type of question. I hope the video helps. If you enjoyed it, click on the like button and subscribe to my page, Mr. Manley History Teacher.